Hello, my friends. I'm going to need you to interact with me some, because I have some bad news for you. I'm afraid you have problems. Now, I know that you are, I see you talking to each other, I see you talking to your neighbor, and you're asking, how did he know that I have problems? And I know because you are programmers, and you work in a repository. And what is it a repository for? Problems, okay? Now, I know that your problems are difficult, and they might be mind-bending, but what if I were to tell you that I already have the solution for your problems? That's right, it starts with an M, and it ends with an Monorepo. That's right, it's a monorepo. Can you say it with me? Monorepo. All right, Monorepo is quite simply the greatest, most fantastic technological invention of the last 50 years. And if whatever problem that you have, whatever technical difficulty you're trying to overcome, the answer is Monorepo. So I'm going to propose some problems, and I need you to respond with the correct answer. Can you say with me, what is the answer? Monorepo. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's say sharing your code takes a PhD. What's the answer? Okay, you can't code a binary tree. You're at broke. You have no tests. Your tools are old. You want the best? You must ship features in a time crunch? Monorepo. Your breath smells funny after lunch? Monorepo, that's right. I could say anything. The answer is? That's right. Thank you, everyone. All right. So, that was that's the Monorepo man. So you have, there are people that try to sell you things like this. They say that the Monorepo or whatever technological invention will solve all your problems. It'll make everything that you're struggling with, it'll make it just all magically go away. So my name is Isaac Mann, and I am not the Monorepo man. But I work at NX, and I'm not trying to sell you a Monorepo. Actually, I want to talk to you about some of the situations, some of the problems that monorepos will not solve. Okay? NX is a fantastic tool. It helps with a lot of technical problems. It helps to reveal the problems that are already in your code base, the issues that are already there, and it's a great way of trying to solve those problems in one fell swoop instead of having to deal with the same problem over and over again on 7 different applications. And so what I've found in working in large code bases is that the limiting factor in how big your monorepo grows is almost never a technical limitation. It's almost always an interpersonal problem, interpersonal conflict. Because the thing is, as you add more code to a repo, you get more people working in that repo. And those people have to work together. So in a small organization, a small company, the people that you work with, they have names and faces and hobbies after work and actual souls. But in a large company, the people you interact with, they become these characters in like a story, and you're the protagonist that has to get past these obstacles that are in your way to career success. So that's my experience of the difference between small and large companies, because you just don't know these people, and they're just names in a Slack channel or something. So I'm going to introduce you to a few of the characters you might interact with as you're trying to grow your monorepo. So the first characters I want to tell you about are the loony devs. And so these are basically pretty much anybody who's not on your team. Anybody who's not on your team, you're going to think of them as the loony devs. And you have no idea what these people are going to do. They might name all your variables with single-letter names. They might take your tests and put them in like a different zip code from the actual code that it's testing. And so you have no idea what they're going to do. And the thing is that they're going to bring their applications along with them when they're joining you in the monorepo. And their application might look like this. And so it's old technology. They're not willing to update to whatever you're doing, and they're just resistant to anything that you're proposing. So the underlying concern you have here with these loony devs is that how maybe they're contagious. Maybe it's like a zombie apocalypse situation, and you're going to end up, huddled in your basement with a shotgun and trying to fend off this bad code from infecting you. So is this really a concern? Is this serious? Yes, this is serious. Bad code does infect your code base. Because once the bad code is in there, then people will see it and say, oh, this is the way they do things here. So I'm just going to copy this, I'm going to reuse this, and that's how it proliferates and it spreads, and pretty soon you're eating out of canned food. So how do you deal with this? Usually another character enters the scene at this point in the conversation. I like to call him the knight with high standards. And so he puts all these rules in place for the PRs, and he'll say something like this: before you can merge this PR, you must cut down the largest tree in the forest with a herring, right? And so, you're laughing because you probably met the knight with high standards, because these people exist, right? They'll say things like, 5 years from now, when I'm reviewing your code, how am I going to ever know, where anything is if you don't alphabetize your commit messages? Right? You can't find anything. Or like, these variable names, they have to be in verb-noun order, not noun-verb order, because it has to be an object modifier, not a modified object, or something. They set these rules in place, and all in the name of keeping the bad code out, because they're concerned that they might all end up like the loony devs. You'll get enslaved on an alien theme park planet. So. Luckily, the knight with high standards is usually not the top decision maker. They're usually a rung or two down. Unfortunately, the caped reviewer, the next character, so often they're at the top. They're the ones that are like Batman. Batman patrols around the city of Gotham, and his mission in life is to personally punch every criminal in Gotham City in the face. Right? So the caped reviewer has the same mindset. He wants to review every single PR that goes into the code base. And on a small team, this can work because there's enough leeway. They can pass them through, and they can actually look and see all the PRs that come through. But as the team grows, as the code base grows, this quickly becomes unmanageable. And it's painful for the caped reviewer, and it's painful for the rest of the team too. So the caped reviewer, they find they have no time to do the rest of their job. They're spending all their time reviewing all the code, and they just can't do anything else, or they just keep getting interrupted. And everyone else wishes that they could get their PR just merged. They just want to get a feature through the door, but there's this giant backlog of all the code that has to be reviewed by this one person. Okay, so speaking of fighting, next character, the Sneetches. Now the Sneetches, this may be a less well-known Dr. Seuss story. The Sneetches are these silly characters that they derive their sense of self-worth and personal satisfaction out of whether they have stars on their bellies or whether they have a plain belly. And they get taken advantage of by this character on the far right here, Sylvester McMonkey McBean, which is, if you want ideas for naming your children, I recommend Sylvester McMonkey McBean. He takes advantage of them by selling them the use of his machine that will put stars on their belly or take stars off their belly. And so this is really silly. We would never do anything like this ourselves in modern days. We would pay money for a visual indicator of our status. That's just ridiculous. Nobody would ever do that. All right, so moving on. So the Sneetches in your company, their whole goal, their whole purpose is to protect their status, protect their application, protect their domain. And they have no space in their mind, in their lives for teamwork or for cooperation. They just won't have it. Okay, so these are all situations that monorepos don't solve. If you were to throw all these characters into the same monorepo, this would be havoc, right? Nothing would get done, everything would grind to a halt, and all the policymakers who said, okay, yeah, go ahead with the monorepo, they would say, this clearly doesn't work. Something's wrong here. We're going back to our old system because this is broken. So the real solution, what is the solution? The real solution is you got to build a better team. And you can't do that just by firing everyone and hiring a whole new company, because you just can't do that. So what you have to do is you have to work with the people that are already there and help them to work better together. Fortunately, all of these characters are they're trying to do their best. They're doing what they think is the best thing for the company, right? Nobody's trying to sabotage the company, even though their actions are causing that sabotage to happen. So all you need to do is you need to speak to them in a language that they understand, using the goals that they already have in mind, and to help them work better together. So let's go through each of these characters and talk about how you can speak to them in a way that they'll understand. So the loony devs. The loony devs, they all have strengths and weaknesses. For instance, let's take Wile E. Coyote. You would never want Wile E. Coyote pushing code directly to production. Like, that would not end well. But on the other hand, Wile E. Coyote is fantastic at persistence. Like, you give him a problem, and he will keep trying over and over and over again, no matter how many times it takes, until he finds the solution. Right? So he's great at that. Tweety Bird, you wouldn't ask Tweety Bird to pick up heavy objects, but Tweety Bird can fly around, or Tweety Bird could go send messages to somebody else. You got to ask the loony devs to do what they're actually good at doing. Use their strengths. So similarly, with actual devs that are coming on your team, they have a framework that they're used to working in, or they have an environment that they're used to working in, and like, they have these strengths that they already know, but maybe they're not used to working in the monorepo that you have set up. Maybe they're not used to working with Angular, or they're not used to working in the patterns that you have set up in your application. So you need to set up an environment where it's okay to say, I don't know something, where you encourage their strengths and you provide training and support for the weaknesses that people have. And set up a space where people are actively working on their weaknesses and supporting each other with, using their strengths to support other people's weaknesses. All right, so let's talk about the knight with high standards. The absolute worst possible thing you could say to the knight with high standards is to say, let's just bring those standards down a notch. Let's just lower your standards a little bit. He will immediately pull out his sword and lop off both arms and legs, and you'd be stuck saying, it's just a flesh wound. But you can't go that way with him. What you need to say is you want to double down on the thing that he's already advocating for. Instead of saying lower your standards on the code, let's raise the standards on your standards. Let's say his mind just went like this, and he's like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you have standards for standards. And so every rule that you put in place for a PR needs to pass the bar of providing more value than it costs in terms of the drag that it puts on the whole development process. All right, the caped reviewer. Usually the caped reviewer is more than happy. If you could show them a way out, they would love you forever if you could show them a way out of having to review all these PRs all the time. So what you need to help them find is a Robin or a Batgirl that can help them review these PRs as well. So the tricky part is that there's a transition process where Robin is not going to be as efficient or catch as many bugs or problems in the PRs as the caped reviewer would. And as long as you can get them ready for that transition process, tell them that there's light on the other side, and you're going to get your workday back. You're going to be able to work on your actual job again. They'll go with you and do that. One thing to watch out for with a caped reviewer, sometimes even though you think they're at the top of the chain and they can make all the decisions, often, especially in larger organizations, you find that whoever you think is actually in charge is not really in charge. So sometimes you have to take it another level or two up. Okay? So that's just the way it is in big companies. Okay, sneeches. Sneeches are usually become sneeches because they're following the incentives that the company has put in place. So maybe their bonus or maybe their promotion is tied to the success or failure of their individual project. And they get nothing if they work with another team or if they collaborate well. So every minute they spend working on your collaboration effort, every time they spend helping another team, you're literally taking food off their table, or you're taking money out of their kids' college fund. Okay, so they're not going to help you if their incentives, if the values of the company say that we should be collaborating and working together, and the incentives that the company is putting out are going in this direction, that's like the definition of dysfunction. So you need to have a conversation with the people in charge who are setting up those incentives to say, if we value this, if we're saying we're valuing this, we need to make sure our incentives are actually lined up with the values that we actually profess. All right, one more character. We'll go back to the Monorepo man. I think even the Monorepo man could work well in our team. So the Monorepo man, we need to help convince him that multiple repos are okay. If for some reason we can't get people in the same repo, we can't get them sharing code easily together, it's okay to use the tooling that NX provides and just introduce that into this separate repo. The Monorepo man loves the tooling, loves the benefits that NX provides, and he's trying to get everybody on the same page and love the same thing that he loves. And so instead of forcing everybody in the same repo, you can say, here, you can go to that other team that is not going to be able to join our team, but you can go to them and you can say, hey, let me help you set up the tooling. Let me help you set up this thing that I love, and we can have two separate repos going at the same time. And that's okay. So if you ever have doubts, and you think that NX says you have to have everything all in the same monorepo, this is Isaac from NX. You can quote me. It's okay to have multiple repos. All right? All right, so what does the NX team do? Do we have one giant monorepo where we store all of our code? No, we do not. So we've got the NX repo that has our open source code. It's got the NX core code and all the plugins that go with NX. Then we have another repo for our closed source code for NX Cloud and other internal apps. We also have a third repo for John and Max to work on NX console. So why are they in a separate repo from everyone else? Well, all right. Well, I'll let you guess. So when you're trying to put people together in the same monorepo, you've got three options. You're having trouble putting people together. The first option, and the best option, if you can do it, is to solve the interpersonal issues, to get on the same page, figure out how to work together as a team. Option number two, if you can't figure out how to work together and people have two different ideas of how things should run, you can leave teams in their own separate repos. That's fine. Third option, we can wait for AI to take over and take control, and they can solve the problems for us, right? Because if there are no more people, we have no more interpersonal problems, right? So next time you're concerned about, you got a fight at work or you don't like the way a meeting's being run, just remember it could be worse. You could be running from a giant robot, and this could be your backyard. So it's not quite, come with me if you want to live. It's not quite at that point. But if you've got a mismanaged monorepo and you can and teams that don't work together, you can dread your work, and you have a work environment where you don't want to come back to work every day. So just remember to pick your battles. Make sure you're optimizing for both technical solutions and for interpersonal solutions, and then you can set up an environment where all your characters that you work with can work happily together. They can make better apps and build your team culture together. So that's it. Thanks, everyone, and happy coding.